Hi everyone, welcome to episode 21 of Off the Sprue. We've now done all our planning and it's time to get started with the first steps in this M113 build. Now, as is the case with most vehicle models, the first step in the instructions is to assemble the engine. And this is what I'll be doing. Again, I'll be relying heavily on reference pictures. Fortunately, there are plenty of those around. And I'm also planning on adding a little extra detail. In this video, we'll be assembling the various parts and prepping them for paint. We'll be applying primer as usual, applying some pre-shading, and then applying the base color. And then finally, we'll be applying an enamel wash. But before we do that, a word from the Rhino. That's right, guys. The kit that I'm building, the Academy M113, is sponsored by Zululand Hobbies. If you're in South Africa, head over to their website and take a look at the various kits and accessories that they offer. So let's get started. The first step requires the assembly of the various engine components, and this is the very first step. First, clean up all these parts. They're very well molded, very nice, sharp and crisp detail. Very little gap filling required. There was a small gap in the front plate of that engine assembly that required a little bit of putty. Also did a dry fit, and the fit is very good. Having now done this, we can move on to primer. I'm using Vallejo's black primer, the matte black primer that I really like for almost all applications. This is applied to the engine as well as the engine bay. So there we go, primer coat has been applied, nice and even, and we can move on to the next step. This is pre-shading. This will be very familiar to aircraft modelers. Basically, this entails adding some contrasting light and dark colors as a base coat. This is not the final coat. We'll be applying our base coat over this, but this really helps to bring out shading, to build in pre-shading, as the word itself says. For the engine, I'm using ordinary black and white. You might want to touch up the black a little bit. I also find that at this stage, having now applied the pre-shading, it helps to sand down the surfaces with a very fine sander. I think this was a 4800 grit sander. And there we go. This engine block is now ready to take the base coat. For the engine bay itself, I'm adding two more colors. One is yellow, and the aim being to apply this in a random pattern. Eventually this will shine through the base coat. I'm also adding a bit of orange, just to bring in some contrasting color. This will make an interesting effect with the final coat. There we go. Now for the base coat itself, I did some research. The original vehicles were painted a color called seafoam green, and this was applied to the interior of the hull as well as the engine block, as you can see in this reference picture. The closest to this is a World War II color, Sky Type S, and this coat is now applied to the engine block. Now the trick is to do this very, very slowly and very evenly, building up the color as you go. You don't want to completely cover the pre-shading. You want those shadow tones to shine through the top coat. So I would apply a little, step back, take a look, and then apply some more. The same goes for the engine bay. So I apply this very, very slowly in multiple layers. Apply a little paint, step back, take a look, decide, apply some more. And this is the final result. You can see the pre-shading at work, doing what it should. Now for the exhaust parts, I'm using Alclad's exhaust manifold as the base color. This is a lacquer paint. And I love these paints for any sort of metallic look. You can see on the reference picture, the exhaust parts are very heavily rusted. And so I'm going to apply some light and dark rust, again from Vallejo. I like to use cash register paper for dry brushing, because you can throw it away afterwards. We first use dark rust and apply a little bit of this to the paper. Next, I use a soft bristle brush, in this case a special dry brush, a dry brush. And the trick, of course, being to remove as much paint as possible from the bristles before applying it to the exhaust part. And this is now lightly brushed onto the exhaust components themselves. Once that is done, I'm using the second color, in this case light rust. Again, I follow the same procedure. Apply some to the paper. Make sure I remove as much paint as possible from the bristles of the brush. I must say I'm quite impressed with this little dry brush. It's from M113. The first time I used a purpose-built dry brush. So there we go. This is again applied to all the exhaust components just to give that second rust tone. Again, try to build this up gradually in multiple layers. Now, just to bring back some metallic, I tried some copper. In this case, Vallejo copper from the model color range. And in this case, I'm going to use a sponge, a little piece of sponge that's on the end of a tweezer. And it works very much in the same principle as dry brushing. Again, dab as much of this paint away onto the paper before you apply it onto the model itself. You don't need a lot of this. Just here and there, just to bring back a little bit of that metallic look that we might have lost after we applied the rust colors. And this is certainly starting to look the business. I love this look. Looks like an old exhaust that has seen a lot of use and a lot of heat. Just keep on applying that color till you arrive at the final result. There we go. This is the final result. I'm certainly happy with this. Now I follow the same procedure to paint the metallic part on what I would assume to be a gearbox or drive shaft assembly. I used alclad steel. And then followed up with some transparent blue, and finally I'm using silver. I'm dry brushing some silver onto the raised detail. Next up is color washes. First, I'm using black wash. This can be thinned with either odorless thinner, or I also like to use Artist White Spirit. For the simple reason it comes in a bigger container, you get a lot more. These little bottles of odorless thinner tend to run out quite quickly. And the trick here is to make this product as thin as possible. You want to have gravity do the work. Just apply some on the areas with recessed detail. And if it's thin enough, it'll flow into all those little recessed details. A mistake that I've often made in the past is to use too dark a wash color. So for the seafoam green areas, I'm using Africa Core Wash. This is my go-to color for most of my projects. I really like this color. It's sort of an in-between color, no color in particular, I like to call it. And this is now also thinned some more and then applied to the engine block itself. And you have it running to all that little recessed details that we see there. Don't worry if you go over a line or apply too much, this stuff easily wipes off. Pay special attention to screws and rivets, all the nuts and bolts. So the same goes for the inside of the engine bay. There are two panels there, as well as the bottom, the sides and the corners. Now when this stuff is dried, it's very easy to just rub it off with some paper towel, or in this case a cotton bud. The standard size will do. And a very useful tool I found recently is these these toothpick shaped cotton buds that they've got a little bit of cotton on the edge, and this works very well for areas where you can't reach with an ordinary cotton bud. So again, just removing as much of the excess wash as possible. And that's it, guys. This is as far as we are now. We're set up very well to proceed with the detailing. That's the engine block itself. A back plate. Very subtle use of the brown, the Africa core wash there. And I love this drive shaft assembly with the metal. All that remains is to assemble the various loose components, in this case the belt, there we go, and then also the exhaust parts. If you're like me, I'm a messy gluer, so I need all the help I can get, and glue applicators with fine tips really goes a long way to help me keep things neat and tidy. There we go, that's the engine block. I'm super happy with this, and we've certainly set ourselves up well to proceed with weathering that I'll be covering in the next video. There we go, guys. This is it for part 1 of this video. These are all the paints that I used. You might notice a few extra things on the weathering graphic that I'm showing you there. Don't worry, I'll be covering those products and how to use them in the next video. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in video 22, when we will be taking a look at part 2, weathering of the engine bay.